Sporty AFCON greetings. I'm VOA Sonny Young. Welcome to episode 1 of Kick It AFCON, a special Africa Cup of Nations podcast brought to you by VOA Africa. I'm joined here in sparkling Studio 2 by my VOA colleagues Mike Hove and Kahli. Abdu. Sporty AFCON greetings.
Sporty greetings. What's good?
Mike, so many surprises in these opening days of the AFCON. What's been your reaction?
Man, oh man. This has definitely been an AFCON to remember. You know, Sonny, since I've been a toddler, I've paid attention to AFCON, and this is definitely one historic one that I will never forget. We've seen a lot of absence. We've seen a lot of disappointments. I said today I came wearing black because the Grim Reaper's alive, Sonny. We've seen a lot of small teams changing up today, and man, oh man, I'm excited to delve deeper.
Kahli, I gotta give it up for the brave warriors of Namibia. I think they've pulled off the biggest upset so far.
Absolutely. We never saw it coming. I mean, when we were analyzing before, we were saying, Tunisia, we were saying Algeria, Morocco, all the big teams. And as you're seeing, it's going to be a very surprising tournament. And Namibia did the business, and hey, all the kudos to them.
Mike, what do you think has been the second biggest upset at this AFCON so far?
It would have to be Ghana, Cape Verde, Sonny. That one, nobody saw it coming. In fact, the Black Stars were trailing pretty much the whole game. Cape Verde was able to upset them, and this was definitely a disappointing moment for Ghana. I mean, Ghana are seen as a big giant on the African soil, and to see a Cape Verde turn it around, shout out to Cape Verde for that. But Ghana definitely was shocking.
I mean, Cape Verde with a player from the MLS.
Wow,
scoring,
that's another topic thing. That's another topic thing.
That's a big.
But it goes back to
highlight.
what we've been talking about, Sonny. You remember what I kept saying to you? All this money in these leagues and all these relationships are leading to this moment. Early on, I was having a conversation with Kahli about this, and one thing we did highlight is gone are the days where these giants were giants, right? Now, even the small teams have one or two players that are playing in these big leagues, and these are the differentiating moments. All this money that we keep seeing, having a Patrice Motsepe, all of that is paying off.
What about the host team, Ivory Coast? How do you like their chances at this point?
I mean, they came out looking good. They came out flying. I definitely applaud their opening performance, and I think they made a loud statement. There's nothing else.
It was definitely helpful, to have the 12-man, just a full stadium. Nigeria's game wasn't nearly as full. It was basically empty, compared to their game. So I think it does help having a full stadium, fans cheering you on. I think it definitely helped them.
I mean, that Nigeria situation was definitely a sad case. The Super Eagles definitely were shut down there.
Yeah.
They should have played a lot more better. I'm looking to delve deeper into that, and I'm really curious to unpack the amount of pressure that is on, for example, a Victor Osimhen, because he seems to be the attention on everything. They expect him to be the turnaround for everything, and it's just more difficult as a player, man. And I'm really curious to see if he can pull it off.
Mike, the man who captained Nigeria to its first Nations Cup trophy way back in 1980, Christian Chukwu, very critical of the Super Eagles. He said, they're a team of stars, but they don't play as a team.
Individual stars. That's what I've been highlighting throughout the whole time, is that we have the Super Eagles have a lot of star power. That goes without a doubt. However, you've got the situation where they're incapable of building from the back, because they don't have a lot of their backline is not as solid in comparison to other players. B, you have a lot of players that are out already. You've got Wilfred Ndidi's out, Boniface is out. So the Super Eagles are just not the Super Eagles that like we expect them to be. But also leading into AFCON, they have not been putting up a good performance. It's just really tricky for them right now. The star power is just not translating to the superstardom.
I would say in their defense, they did start similarly in the last AFCON that they won. Kind of drew the first game, and then Nigerians are talking about permutations. It's like we have to figure out all these mathematical equations to see if we qualify. They started that way, and they grew into the tournament. So you never know. Right now, they have a very tough game against Ivory Coast that they must win. So you don't want to go into the tournament,
looking for a must win.
A must win against the host. So it's very tough.
Well, Kahli, based on your apparel in the studio, you certainly still have faith in the Super Eagles.
No, I mean this is a classic, from '98, and so when the Super Eagles were the Super Eagles,
exactly.
So I'm hoping that we can see some of the form that the Super Eagles when they wore this in '96 and won the Olympics in Atlanta. I'm hoping that they can show that same sort of form. That's why I'm wearing it.
Well, Mike, I understand we have a special guest on the line from Abidjan.
We are joined live via Skype from Abidjan by Muqbil Yabarow, our correspondent who's out there in Abidjan. Let's hear what he's got to say. Swizz, what's good, brother?
I'm good, man. I mean, Abidjan, I'm having a great time, man. The AFCON tournament has been a pleasure, to say the least. So let's get into it, gentlemen.
You see how clear his skin looks,
I was about to say, you look like you're having a good time.
It must be the glow.
Now, let's delve into it, Swizz. I want to start off with the Ivory Coast, the hosts themselves, man. What's it looking like out there with the 12th man? How are they looking, man?
I will say that Ivory Coast has fans all across the country. Even individuals that don't even support the game are still out supporting their country. So they have that going for them. Now, whether it's inside the stadiums, outside the stadiums, in fan zones alike, the entire city of Abidjan is out and about for the Ivorians. So they have no issue at all with not only a 12th man, a 13th and a 14th. They're everywhere. They're out and about, and they're very excited, especially after coming off of an amazing and very impressive win to start off the tournament. As you guys were just mentioning before I came on, Nigeria, Ivory Coast is going to be a very, very big matchup for both teams.
Muqbil, I remember when you first arrived in Abidjan, you said you saw a lot of posters of Sebastian Haller. What's his current status in terms of his fitness?
Very, very questionable. I don't know what it is that seems to be his issue per se, and I think they're kind of keeping it hush-hush. But it would be very helpful if Sebastian was in form and able to play against this Nigerian team. But we will have to see. It's kind of like a game-time decision. I'm not too sure if you guys have heard anything different.
Now, moving past Ivory Coast, I want to touch on Cape Verde. I know you were actually one of the folks that were at the training session, and we had this conversation before. Cape Verde came out, shocked everybody, managed to pull off 3 points in their opening game. Talk to me about what it looked like for their training, man, because that upset is one that a lot of Ghanaians will not be forgetting anytime soon.
Yeah, to be honest with you, Mike, I went to the training facility with our Portuguese colleague Alvaro Andrade, and he knows some people in the camp, and we went out there, and to be honest with you, you could really sense the energy of this team. It's a relatively younger team, but they have no care in the world in terms of them feeling like they're underdogs. They were practicing hard, really giving it their all. Sometimes they say, when you practice like a game pace, it really translates into it. Sometimes you have teams or players, individual players, that are just too cool to practice, too cool to train. They just really just showing about and kind of just doing the motions. But these guys really were looking like the goalies were in a separate section with the goalie setup. They had the goalie coaches, strikers over here, midfield. It was super spread out. Everyone was utilizing their respective spaces in the training facility. They had music blaring. I don't know if it was, I believe it was Creole. They were listening to it. They were jamming, man. And I really wasn't that shocked that they came out with that intensity because I saw what they did in their training camp.
Man, oh man, oh man. But let me hold you there, Muqbil. Let's hear what some of the players from Cape Verde had to say, man. We've got a clip from Jamiro Monteiro. He's one of the Cape Verdean players. I want to hear what he has to say, and then we're going to come back and do a little more analysis.
Yeah, after the game, I think for everybody, amazing feeling. Everybody's so proud. We play against a big country with amazing players, and to get a good result is an amazing feeling. So we are very happy. So I hope we continue like this. I think we just need to focus on the game, and we are going for every game to win. So just focus on ourselves and give all what we have, and believe. I think belief is the most important thing, and I think the whole group believe. So like Friday is the next game, and we believe that we're gonna win that game too.
Hunger there for success. Kahli, you hear the young teams there, they're all coming out roaring. There's no underdog at this tournament. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, it reminds me of the junior teams, from Africa. Whenever they go out to these international tournaments, they spark like that because there's a lot of hunger, there's enthusiasm. When I compare that to some of the big teams, they almost expect to win, right? And they're kind of jogging around, and you're facing a hungry team like Cape Verde when you're Ghana, and you just never expect that they will have that energy. And I was mentioning that there's a player from the MLS, Jamiro Montero.
That's what's speaking.
I mean, there's a player from the Turkish league. These aren't players that you expect to come in here and score the goals, but that's exactly what they're doing. As Muqbil said, they're training very hard, and obviously it's translating on the pitch.
Montero said it was an amazing result, but then he quickly said our focus is on our next opponent
game.
And that can only build their confidence.
I mean, like Muqbil said, when you attend such training sessions and you hear the focus and the music is all flaring, it's almost like the music gods and the football gods are singing for you, and it really materialized. I'm really curious to see what it looks like for Ghana moving forward. Kahli, I wanted your thoughts on that one. Ghana, like we highlighted, football. These are giants on the continent. What exactly could have happened there, man? You still have superstars like Inaki Williams in the starting lineup.
And to be fair, Ghana played well. They were energetic as well. It's just that it didn't land for them when it should have. I think their only goal, Majid Ashimeru, who plays in Belgium, was a screamer. It's one of those where if he plays that 3 times, he may miss the other 2. So that was fortunate for them. But, you can't take away from Cape Verde's tactics, their game plan, with the energy. Unfortunately for Ghana, their next game is against Egypt, which,
I mean, it's both teams, did not get off to good starts. So that's going to be a crucial match for both teams.
So that's a final.
Right. So speaking of Ghana, let's hear what the coach had to say. Chris Hughton, Ghana's coach, he speaks more on their loss and he talks on the prospects for the next game.
Nobody should underestimate any opponents here because there are no what we regard as weak teams in this tournament. So certainly I wouldn't be disrespectful to any opponent that we play today or play at any other stage. It's up to us now to have to recover tomorrow, and we know now that going into the Egypt game, it's a game that we have to get a good result from. And I think that has to be the mentality. The players have to be aware of what this means and how disappointed everybody associated with the country and with the team are. And we have no choice. We have no choice but to make sure that it's a favourable result in our next game against Egypt.
Now, one thing I took away there from what Chris Hughton said is there are no small teams in this
I heard
tournament.
that.
That was the loudest statement. Muqbil, let's bring you back here. I'm really curious, and I really, really want to focus on these small teams because this has been like a string of upsets when we're talking about AFCON history. Typically, it's one team there, one team there. But here, I remember, Sonny, we were talking about Sadio Mane, his comments where you were saying 12 teams could take this.
Yeah, when he first said that, I thought 12 teams.
12.
Can there really be 12?
It's materializing where even the small teams are turning out to be giants. What exactly are you seeing on the ground there when we're talking about these small teams getting ready for their second games?
Yeah, Mike, right before I get into that, I just wanted to kind of just jump on that Ghana situation. Ghana versus Egypt is going to be very interesting because, as you guys mentioned, both teams are coming off of draws, right? Now, we're kind of harping on Ghana. I'm saying Ghana lost, actually, but Egypt got a draw. But realistically speaking, they got a very, very lucky super late penalty. And Mozambique really played a better game than Egypt. So all in all, like my takeaway from that game was that Mozambique showed that Egypt is not as strong as people may have thought in this tournament. So what that does is it gives a little bit of hope to Ghana to say, look, we can come in there and we can get a decisive result. If I'm not mistaken, I believe Mohamed Kudus is also going to be available to play in that game. He's coming off of this hamstring injury, this lingering injury for him. And usually, even if he isn't playing up to the quality that we know he can play, he's just going to be a decoy, because as an Egyptian, you're going to be thinking to yourself, this kid can create no matter where he's at. So even if you're able to just put him in the wing on a corner or something on an island, and defenders are looking at him and just constantly not knowing whether or not he's going to really be getting involved, I think that in and of itself will be, just enough to be able to get Ghana some openings. And we'll see what happens in that game. But as you mentioned, Mike, on that question about the smaller teams, I think realistically speaking, what I've seen is that every single game, for the most part, maybe outside of the Senegal game and the I would say Senegal and Ivory Coast game, outside of those two games, every other game has been relatively competitive, right? So with that being said, we're seeing that these smaller teams no longer are looking at themselves as smaller teams. Equatorial Guinea played a really good game against Nigeria. You know what I mean? Nigeria just happens to have the greatest striker at the moment in Africa, in Victor Osimhen. And Vic really just, because sometimes there were moments where Equatorial Guinea was playing a little better or getting a little bit more opportunities than Nigeria was, but Vic just kind of nailed it in. He had a second opportunity one-on-one against the goalie, and the goalie made it very difficult. 9 times out of 10, Vic knocks that to the back of the net. So this is just showing that this has become a tournament where, you play as big as you feel. And to me, the smaller teams are feeling as big as ever. So we'll see how they, play in the next coming games.
Kahli, could we see one of the Jollof brothers being knocked out in the group stages?
It's possible. I also wanted to mention, to his point, I want to talk a little bit about tactics. We talk about all these superstars. We talk about, underdogs and energy, but tactics play a huge role here. Because as a manager, when you look at what you have on paper, and you look at who you're coming up against, the tactics make a huge difference. Right. I noticed with Egypt, they played a more tactical game, but Mozambique played a more energetic game, and energy won over tactics. And the coach tried to reshuffle. When he was trying to reshuffle, Mozambique switched to a three in the back, formation, and that really he didn't see that coming, and he was playing catch up the whole time. So Super Eagles have big players, but the tactics are a little questionable. And that's what you hear most of the Nigerian supporters mentioning. So I think this is an opportunity for the coaches to also step up and, just shuffle their teams around and figure out how to beat, energy when you're facing energy or, So anyway, to your point, I think that the Jollof...
I call them the Jollof brothers.
They have to look at their tactics. When you have big players, there really isn't an excuse. When you face a team that's playing with a lot of energy and exuberance, sometimes your tactics could make the difference.
Because I'm really curious about that. Because both of them, right? Nigeria's next game, Ivory Coast. Ghana's next game, Egypt. These are both do or die games for both of them, right? Because both of them need those 3 points to ensure, at the very least, they can comfortably make it through the next round. What does this say about the growth of football in Africa when you see all these small teams now making a statement where a Nigeria and a Ghana need to make sure that they're fighting for their lives just to make it through the group, not to win?
It's lovely. That's what we want to see. We want to see competition. We don't want a tournament that we already know who would win. It becomes boring. I think that people who weren't paying attention to AFCON now would, because you're seeing these highlights and you're seeing these results. You go, oh, hold on a second. Mo Salah, is struggling. Victor Osimhen is struggling. Mahrez, all these players are struggling. I need to check this out. So it's great for the sport.
Yeah. Cape Verde, where is that even located?
An MLS player, I keep saying that.
The whole Lusophone world has turned up. Angola looking amazing. Mozambique looking amazing. Cape Verde looking amazing. This is really an AFCON to be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Muqbil, let's bring you back here, man. So moving into, I guess, when we look at the Giants and the tournaments and the standings, how are the fans reacting in Ivory Coast?
I think, like I mentioned, bro, they're all of the fans for their respective teams are out and about. Nigerian fans are out here in the masses, Ghanaian fans are out here. But interestingly enough, because the tournament is being played in so many different cities, a lot of the fan bases are going to be respectively in those areas. So Abidjan mainly, you'll see the same teams that are playing here: the Egypts, as we mentioned, the Nigerias, the Ghanas, the Cape Verde. So those teams mainly will be the ones that you'll kind of be seeing in recurrence and just seeing them when they're walking around in the city. But outside of that, you might see a couple here and there, maybe that didn't go all the way out to these other cities to watch the games, but are here to support their teams nonetheless.
Now, speaking of the other teams in Southern Africa, Sonny's wearing the jersey. I don't know why, but yesterday my heart was broken there when we saw Bafana.
Mike grew up in South Africa, by the way.
What boys do? They couldn't play like men. They played like boys. Percy Tau missing that penalty
You
there.
told me you were going to wear the jersey. That's what I'm
Now
stuck
you're
on.
snitching. Now you're
That's
snitching.
what I'm stuck on. Why didn't you wear the jersey?
But what did it look like there for people watching the game? We saw
Listen,
Bafana
Mike,
losing 2-0.
Mike, heartbreaking. I was there, in solidarity with the South Africans, with Bafana, because there's a part of me that likes the underdog story, right? Knowing that this Malian team is one of the teams, I wouldn't say necessarily expected to win,
But they're up there.
it is they're a dominating force. So, you kind of expected them to steamroll over this team, especially early on. And when you had, like South Africa get that PK, oh my goodness, it was like God sent. You're thinking to yourselves, they pan to the crowd. Crowd is looking so excited. And it's like, my man, hit it into where was the goal at? Like, and I'm sitting here in shock, mouth just like as if I've been a lifelong South African Bafana fan. I was that shocked because, this is a tournament where not very many opportunities are given to you like that. So when something like that is given to you, you are supposed to put that in the back of the net. And then if you have to, park the bus.
That's it.
It wasn't like South Africa didn't have a lot of ball possession. It wasn't like they weren't playing well. Mali was just being way more clinical in their finishing, and that's pretty much what differentiates the teams that have the ability to kind of stay around and just finish. And some of the bigger teams actually have had more problems than the smaller teams in being clinical in that last third.
Kahli, Samuel Eto'o, one of the people that commented on Bafana squad, right? Bafana arguably have the strongest local league on the continent.
Absolutely.
A lot of players, Cape Verdean players, a lot of Mozambican, a lot of Angolans, players from across the continent all play in the South African PSL.
Yeah.
Looks amazing. You see Mamelodi Sundowns, local league, they all shine. Kaizer Chiefs, they all shine. Orlando Pirates, they all shine. What exactly happens on an international stage? Why? What happens?
Tactics, management. That's what it boils down to. A lot of the times when you bring together players from different clubs, they need to gel. And, I think I mentioned the fact that even though players are complaining about playing too many games, and, you have in Europe, they have the Nations League now because really it's just because players need to gel. And the more they play in high-profile matches, the more, they gel. And perhaps, South Africa just needs more international experience. I would say this tournament will be, something that they can look at and it will help them in future tournaments. But it's just part of the game. They just need to play often together. And even though they play in a great league in Africa, perhaps it's just not translating in an international stage.
And Mike, while Bafana did take a loss in their opening match, perhaps they can take a little bit of pride in the goal scorer for Namibia from Orlando Pirates.
Let's go.
And it's a Southern African neighbor.
Right. Look, this translates to exactly what I just asked, Kahli, is that you're seeing players that play in the South African PSL shining on the continental level, but somehow it just doesn't contribute the PSL itself. Well, it contributes to the PSL, but not to South Africa's national team, which is what a lot of people find confusing. Now, granted, Bafana has their fair share of issues when it talks about corruption, blah, 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 blah. But you still have other countries that have a lot of political turmoil, but somehow shine at AFCON. Burkina Faso shines at AFCON. Mali shines at AFCON. What exactly leads to that moment?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't pinpoint one specific thing. It could be ultimately, like I keep mentioning, tactics. It could be just players not gelling. It could be a lack of enough fans in the crowd. It could be a myriad of factors. You never know what specifically. But I would say, if they have many players in the South African team playing in the same league, then they should already know each other, right? But I'm going to reference a point. Majority of the English players in the England team play in the Premier League. But
Yes.
and they have the best players almost,
Yes.
you would
Yes.
say. But they don't win. And, it's just, it's always...
At the international level.
Yes, they don't win at the international level. And there's always question marks. They keep switching managers. You just keep trying until you get it right. It's just the way the game goes.
Try until you get it right.
Well, if Muqbil's still there, quick question on the organization, Muqbil. First time Ivory Coast has hosted in
a very long time.
40 years. What's your sense of the organizational aspects of this AFCON?
It's been really tough without being extremely critical about it. It's just been a challenge, and I don't know whether that's on the Ivorian authorities or if it's on AFCON in general. But finding tickets for fans has been relatively difficult, even though some of the stadiums are looking like they're relatively empty. So they're working on a bunch of things, and hopefully in the next coming days, that will not be too big of a problem. One last point before we leave, a player to watch, Lamine Camara from Senegal. I know Senegal had a relatively easy game, but I just wanted to shout out this young man, under 20 years old. He plays for Metz in League One right now. Phenomenal player. I think he's a player to watch for the rest of the tournament. Metz is a team that Sadio Mane actually started at in his career when he went to Europe. So, knowing that, that team has an eye for players like him, just keep an eye out for this young man. 2 goals in his first game. If he keeps on this pace as an attacking midfielder, he's going to have all the big clubs knocking.
I guess as we wrap up, let's focus on the players themselves. Muqbil, who else would you think people should look out for outside of Kamara?
Oof, outside of Kamara, man, I think Victor Osimhen has a heavy burden on his shoulder. Carrying Nigeria on his back. I think I would definitely have to put him up there. And Mo Salah, really, it's to me, first game didn't really show the type of form that he's been in Liverpool, leading the EPL in not only points and goals scored, but also in assists. Really can't look like that, So hopefully we see what he's able to do. And moving forward, we'll watch the rest of the team, the players as well.
Kahli, Sadio Mane, showing that experience, showing that composure, that assist towards that first goal. What does that say about him as a player?
He's a legend, Senegalese legend. He loves the sport, and he's showing all the experience that he has, over the years. I wanted to say about Egypt. They got to play him where he shines for Liverpool. Don't put him in the as a CAM. Play him as a winger. Okay. But again, we are talking tactics. So,
So tactically, it's been interesting Nations Cup.
This is definitely going to be an AFCON to be remembered. I re-emphasize this. We're going to see a lot of disappointments in this Africa Cup of Nations. I'm looking forward to seeing how these small teams are going to rear up. I'm looking forward to seeing if the Giants can wake up and turn it around. So far, we've only seen Senegal shine. We've only seen Ivory Coast shine. If we're going to include Mali, we're going to include Mali in that conversation. Those are the only 3 big teams on the continent that have been shining. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how everyone else will be able to turn it around. Will Nigeria be able to turn it around? Will Ghana be able to turn it around? We saw it during the World Cup in Qatar, where Argentina lost their first game and they managed to turn it around and win the World Cup. Is it possible? It's something I'm looking forward to. But Sonny, let's wrap this up, brother.
Okay, on behalf of my friend Mike Hove and Kahli Abdu, I'm Sonny Young. Thanks for joining us for episode 1. Episode 2 of Kick It AFCON will be next week. And also, Mike, you can get our Nations Cup updates on...
We're definitely going to be there. Come to voaafrica.com. Come to our Facebook, Sunny Side of Sports, and make sure that you pay attention. Kick It AFCON. I'm Mike Hove. Let's catch up next week.